This message is for every man who's ever sat in silence, staring at a blank screen, wondering why she hasn't reached out. You tell yourself to stay calm. You wait. You hope. You check your phone again, and again, and again. You hold back from texting first. You wonder if silence will speak louder than words. You ask yourself, is she done? Or is she waiting on me? But what if I told you her silence is the message? And what if I told you that the way you respond to that silence, not with panic, not with chasing, but with presence, will define who you become from here? Because I don't chase breadcrumbs. I don't wait to be chosen. And neither should you. This is more than a video. This is a moment. One where you stop playing the guessing game. One where you stop tying your value to her attention. If you've been waking up anxious, scrolling, overthinking, waiting for a woman who isn't waiting for you, then hear this. Silence is not confusion, it's clarity. But only the grounded man, the man with emotional discipline, the Stoic man, can hear what it's really saying. This message might sting. It's meant to, because some of you have spent years trying to fix women who never asked to be fixed. And if that feels like you, if something in your chest just woke up, then this isn't just a wake-up call. It's a shift. Subscribe to the channel, not for me, but for every man out there who's still chasing silence and losing himself in the process. Let's rise together. Number 1, she's waiting for you to react. There's a reason her silence feels louder than anything she's ever said. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of intention. You may think she's pulling away, but in truth, she's watching from the shadows, quietly, studying the space between you, like a magnifying glass on your soul. She's not gone. She's just stepped back to see what fills the gap, and that gap, it's a test. Not with questions, but with stillness. Not to hurt you, but to reveal you. Every message you don't send, every urge you resist, every time you hold your frame, you're sending an answer. Without words. You think she forgot about you, but she hasn't. She's just created a vacuum, and she wants to see what floods into it. Your chaos or your calm. Picture this. A man sits alone, phone in hand. He's typed and deleted the message 3 times already. His thumb hovers. His chest is tight. He's torn between reaching out and staying silent. But it's not about her anymore. It's about his fear, his uncertainty, his belief that if he doesn't move, he'll be forgotten. What he doesn't know is she's waiting too, not for his words, but for his reaction. Because in that quiet moment, your identity surfaces. Are you the storm, or are you drowning in one? This is where most men break. They panic, they chase, they make the silence about them. But it was never about the silence. It was about what the silence would show. Women use distance not always to leave, but to create a mirror. And what it reflects is your emotional discipline, or the lack of it. Here's the hard truth. A man who can't sit with silence, who needs a reply to feel valuable, can't be respected. If her distance causes you to spiral, to beg, to chase, to lose your center, then you were never grounded to begin with. You cannot lead. If every unread message pulls you in 10 directions, that's why her silence, whether she knows it or not, becomes a test, not of interest, not of love, but of you. So ask yourself this: what if the silence you're afraid of is actually a challenge to grow into the kind of man she'd never dare walk away from? You don't need to say a word for her to see you. She's watching everything you do in the silence. Not just what you say, but how you carry yourself when no one's applauding. True power shows when the lights go out, when the attention fades, when the noise is gone, and only your choices remain. Do you spiral, or do you stand? That's what she's learning about you right now. You might think she's done with you, but her silence isn't absence. It's strategy. She's creating space, not to disappear, but to observe. And every second you stare at that blank screen, you're telling her a story. She's not listening to your words. She's listening to your silence. And in that quiet space, you're either becoming stronger or exposing your cracks. She's seen your post. She watched your story. She's been online 3 times today, and still nothing. That's not confusion. That's control. Not in a manipulative way, but instinctive. She wants to know if your identity collapses when hers disappears. Not to hurt you, but to understand your depth. A man who panics without attention has built his worth on sand. If she pulls away and you fall apart, then you weren't stable to begin with. You were leaning on her presence instead of standing on your own. You can't ask a woman to trust you. If you crumble the moment she withdraws, real masculinity isn't loud. It's unwavering. Now picture a man who doesn't fold. He feels the pull of silence, but uses it. He lifts, he creates, he earns, he learns. He channels all that uncertainty into building a world that no woman can shake. He doesn't post for attention. He doesn't beg for signs. He doesn't flinch when it's quiet. And that's what makes her notice. Not the desperation, but the discipline. Not the reaching out, but the rising up. The man who detaches without becoming bitter. He shifts the entire dynamic. Not because he chased, but because he didn't have to. Stoicism isn't a lack of emotion. It's command over it. The Stoic man still feels, still wants, still hooch, but he doesn't act from the wound. He acts from the center. He doesn't react to the silence. He lets it shape him, sharpen him, elevate him. And that restraint, that clarity, it's rare and unforgettable. What if she never texts again? Would your life stall? Would your vision dim? Would your momentum die? If the answer is yes, then you've made her the sun, and yourself the orbit. But a man on mission doesn't wait for light. He becomes it. You weren't meant to chase. You were meant to create gravity. Most men seek validation without realizing it. They think they miss her, but what they miss is who they felt like when she responded. That's not love. That's identity hunger. And until you feed that from within, you'll keep falling into women who test you just to see if you even know who you are. You no longer need her response to feel like a man. You move differently now. Focused, quiet, centered. You don't stalk her stories. You don't reread the past. You don't wait for the ping to tell you you're enough. Because now you remember you were never meant to be understood through her. You were meant to stand with or without her understanding you. And that's the energy she never forgets. Number 2, she's not yours to fix. When she stops reaching out, you panic. You replay your last words, last messages, last looks trying to find where it went wrong. You assume her silence is your mistake, that it's your job to fix it. But what if it's not about you? What if her silence is not a signal but a decision? Not all distance is rejection. Not all quiet is broken. The storm you're trying to calm might not be yours to enter. The moment you make her emotions your responsibility, you start losing yourself. You bend, you guess, you chase. You try to prove your value by fixing something you didn't break. And when she stays silent, you start unraveling. But here's the truth. Not every silence is your cue to perform. Not every emotional shift is an invitation. The more you try to heal what isn't yours, the more you give yourself away, until one day you realize she never asked you to fix her. You just assumed she needed saving. She's not a broken project, not some puzzle you're meant to solve with affection, patience, and sacrifice. She might be battling her own storms, but that doesn't make them your burden to carry. You are not her savior. You're not responsible for reorganizing her pain into peace. You can care, but still step back. Believing that loving her harder will unlock her is not love, it's desperation. You begin measuring your worth by how much pain you can absorb, how much silence you can tolerate, how far you can bend without breaking. But ask yourself, would you want someone solving your emotions without you asking them to? If not, then why are you volunteering to solve hers? Being a good man doesn't mean being endlessly available. It doesn't mean accepting everything in the name of love. It doesn't mean giving without limits. Real strength is knowing where your care ends and self-respect begins. There's a fine line between being supportive and being swallowed, and you cross it the moment you lose yourself, trying to hold on to someone who never asked to be held. If your relationship starts feeling like a therapy session, where your feelings stay quiet just to manage hers, that's not love. That's emotional debt. And the longer you carry that debt, the more you pay in pieces of yourself. Every time she grows cold, and you chase. Every time she's distant, and you panic. Every time she withdraws, and you overcompensate. You're not showing strength. You're proving that you'll shrink, just to be kept. Here's the part no one wants to hear. Not every woman who pulls away is in pain. Some just aren't that into you. And instead of saying it, they go silent. They hope you'll take the hint. They'd rather fade than confront. And your instinct to chase, to overgive, to prove your worth, only pushes them further. Because deep down, they didn't want saving. They just didn't want to stay. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not every woman who goes silent is hurting. Some are simply no longer emotionally invested. But instead of being honest, they vanish into quiet. Not out of cruelty, but to avoid discomfort. They hope you'll get the message, without them needing to deliver it. But you misread the silence. You assume she's lost, broken, waiting for rescue. So you send the texts. You offer comfort. She didn't request. You try to fill the gap not because she needs it, but because you can't bear the vacuum it leaves inside you. She didn't need repair. She needed clarity, maybe freedom, or maybe someone else. But if your worth is built on being her hero, then her distance feels like an attack. You think, if I fix it, maybe she'll come back. So you double down, you overgive, you show up even harder. But you're not giving out of love, you're negotiating for your value. It's not her affection you're after. It's the reflection of worth you've tied to her attention. If I sacrifice more, maybe she'll choose me. That isn't love. That's fear of being forgotten. That's a man begging not to be erased. You think your effort makes you worthy. But in truth, the more you abandon yourself to keep her, the more invisible you become. Now picture that same man. Instead of chasing, redirecting that energy into something unshakable. He trains, he builds, he surrounds himself with strength. He no longer needs her attention to feel complete. He becomes the man who doesn't beg. He becomes. Number 3, she's measuring your value. There's always a moment in every relationship. A moment when the conversation's quiet, when the energy no longer flows like it used to. And in that pause, Where words used to build bridges, a subtle silence begins to stretch wide. Most men panic here. They overthink, worry, analyze. They mistake the stillness for danger, when in truth, it's a moment of reflection, not just hers, but yours. Because what you're missing is this, that silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of observation. She's not looking to see if you'll chase. She's not waiting for you to beg. She's watching to see if your calm is real, or just a performance that crumbles under pressure. Her silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. She steps back not to disappear, but to see who you are without her validation. And most men fail this test because they don't realize they're taking one. You might call it a game. You might think it's manipulation, but more often than not, it's instinct. Just like you want to know if she's loyal and present, she wants to know if you're grounded and stable. She can't always ask that directly words lie, but energy never does. So she listens to the space you create when she goes quiet. And what she hears is either strength or chaos. She measures you not by how much you say, but by who you become when nothing is being said. And this is where most men reveal their insecurity. They rush in with long texts, with sudden confessions, with jealousy dressed up as concern. But to her, it just confirms what she feared. You don't feel valuable unless she's constantly showing it. She doesn't need to see you panic. She needs to see if your identity can hold when her presence fades. If your self-worth depends on her attention, that tells her more than any word you say. It shows her your confidence is conditional. And women aren't just drawn to good looks or charm. They're drawn to men who are stable when emotions shift. If you collapse in her silence, she knows she can't trust you in the storm. Now, imagine two men. The first feels her distance and starts spiraling, texting non-stop, scrolling through her profile, replaying every message in his mind, trying to fix something he doesn't understand. He reacts because he feels powerless. The second man senses her absence and responds with clarity. He doesn't chase. He realigns with his goals, not to prove a point, but because he never left himself to begin with. His strength isn't in silence. It's in self-respect. And here's the truth. Real presence doesn't beg for attention. It holds steady, even when no one's watching. He's not playing hard to get. He's become hard to unseat, because his value isn't measured by how fast he replies, but by how consistent he remains under pressure. Most men never learn this. They're taught to apologize fast, to over-explain, to fix what was never theirs to carry. And in the process, they betray themselves, shrinking into a version they hope she'll validate. But women don't fall for words. They feel energy, and the moment your energy shifts from grounded to grasping, she senses it. That's when attraction fades. Not because you weren't enough, but because you stopped being you. When you adjust yourself to calm her doubts, you lose the tension that once attracted her. Not because you became a worse man, but because you stopped being the one who didn't chase approval. So instead of reacting to her silence, return to your structure. Let your actions speak. Rebuild your rhythm. If she steps away, don't collapse. Continue spinning, like your world was never built around her validation. This is the quiet moment where most relationships shift. They don't break from betrayal. They dissolve in silence. When one person realizes the other cannot stand steady without constant reassurance. And here's where true masculinity emerges, the ability to hold space, not fill it with desperation. Emotional containment means your stability doesn't crack. When things feel uncertain, You don't let someone else's withdrawal unbalance you. Instead, you stay grounded. You stay focused. You keep moving. That's what attracts more than looks ever could. The calm, the clarity, the stillness in you, the kind of strength that doesn't scream, it stays, not out of fear, but because it knows where it stands. And yes, sometimes her silence is a test, but not to play games. It's to see if she can trust the version of you that shows up when she's not around. In your silence, she hears stability. In your restraint, she feels self-respect. In your consistency, she senses leadership. But when you sway too easily, when your emotions ride her mood, she begins to feel unsafe, not because you're weak, but because your strength is conditional, and no woman wants to carry the burden of being your emotional center. No woman wants to carry the emotional weight of two people when she has to be strong for both of you. What began as attraction quietly turns into exhaustion. She might like you, even care for you, but if she senses that she's the only one holding the structure in place, the relationship stops feeling magnetic. It starts to feel like a burden. And women don't want to mother the man they desire. The most attractive men aren't always the most handsome or wealthy. They're the ones who remain unshaken through chaos, not because they're emotionless, but because they've mastered their emotions. They've built their foundation on discipline, purpose, and self-respect. Their value doesn't come from being praised. It comes from knowing their worth, even in silence. And the irony is, the more they anchor into that clarity, the more a woman's silence becomes admiration instead of withdrawal. That's when she returns, not because he begged, but because she saw what most women never see: a man who didn't need love to be whole, a man who didn't chase her affection, but radiated strength without saying a word, a man whose value wasn't up for negotiation because it was already undeniable. And here's where everything shifts. He's no longer asking, will she choose me? He's asking, do I even want her energy in my world? And whether she stays or walks, his foundation holds. His identity is rooted because he's learned. Her silence was never the real test. It was his need for external validation that needed to die. Number 4. Become a man she regrets leaving. There comes a moment when the silence gets loud, not because she's calling or texting, but because she's not. The room you once shared feels hollow. It's filled not with her voice, but with echoes of what used to be memories, doubts, and questions that don't have answers. This is where most men break. You see, this isn't just heartbreak. It's a moment of decision. You could chase her, you could plead, you could get lost trying to bring her back. Or you could bring yourself back, not the version that relied on her to feel whole, but the version you lost in the process of loving her more than you loved yourself. The man she regrets leaving is not the man who sent long messages or begged for closure. He's the one who disappeared, not out of pettiness, but out of purpose. The one who took the pain and built something with it. He didn't scream. He didn't break. He turned that silence into structure. And when he emerged, he was someone even she couldn't recognize. Because this isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing her with your absence. It's about choosing transformation, becoming so aligned, so focused, so full of life, that her validation no longer defines your direction. You don't orbit anyone anymore. You move from center, and that clarity doesn't come easy. You'll have to look at the version of yourself she walked away from. He may have been too soft, too available, too eager to please, not weak, but unanswered. And while he may have been loving, He had not yet learned to love from strength. That's what must change. Because the man who turns loss into fuel, who reshapes pain into purpose, isn't just remembered, he's felt. Long after you stop speaking, your presence lingers in places she didn't expect. In the way you now carry yourself, the way your silence no longer begs, but radiates. So picture it. You stop texting first. You stop checking if she's online. Instead, you're in the gym before sunrise. You're reading. You're building. You're silent, not because you're avoiding her, but because you've outgrown the need to be seen by someone who couldn't see you clearly to begin with. And while she's out there wondering what you're doing, whether you still think about her, you're too deep in your growth to look back. You've learned what no book could teach, that true value isn't loud, isn't desperate. It's still, it's steady, and when the world sees it, it doesn't question, it respects, because the man who commands respect never has to ask for it. Every time she thinks about you, she won't recall the man who begged. She'll remember the man who vanished into the shadows and came back unrecognizable, sharper, calmer, intouchable. She won't mourn lost affection. She'll realize she never truly knew the man you were becoming. That realization won't arrive gently. It will sting, because it's the truth. Because when men rise after heartbreak, they don't just recover, they rebuild. They don't just heal, they harden. These men don't chase closure, they craft clarity. They stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing themselves with brutal consistency. That need for external validation, gone. What's left is unshakable inner value. It begins not with revenge, but with reflection. You ask yourself questions no one dares to ask. What have I tolerated that's been quietly breaking me? Who am I when no one's looking? Would I want to date the man I am right now? Answer truthfully, and you won't just learn. You'll be forced to grow. Because when a man confronts his own reflection, he either upgrades or repeats. But this growth isn't about mindset alone. It demands structure. Clean your room like it's a sacred temple. Eliminate every trace of chaos, distraction, and digital noise. Set boundaries. Without apology. Block her if you must. Not out of hate, but to cut the energetic cord that keeps you stuck in fantasy. This isn't about punishment. It's about purification. Train your body to withstand life, not to impress her. Wake up earlier. Eat with discipline. Turn off the apps. Study something difficult. Set goals that terrify you and attack them without mercy. Every rep, every journal entry, every decision should scream, I don't need her. I need mastery. That's how you reclaim your gravity. And trust this, she'll feel it. She won't say it, but she'll sense it. The silence that once felt like absence now radiates control. Your energy no longer leans forward. It stands tall. You speak less, but your presence says more. She doesn't know what happened, but she knows something has changed. You're not the same man who once waited. You no longer chase. You no longer wonder. You no longer care whether she sees your story or replies to your message, because now your attention has become expensive. You're building a life where no one's presence defines your worth. And when she finally notices, maybe she texts, maybe she doesn't, you won't flinch. You've outgrown the version of you who needed her response. And that's the real win. Not her coming back, not her apology, but the moment you realize you don't need either. You don't hate her. You don't resent her. You simply evolved past her role in your story. Even if love remains, it stays at a distance, no longer begging, no longer bleeding. Your boundaries are built now, not spoken, becoming the man she regrets losing was never about revenge or even redemption. It was always about transcendence. You became the man who walks in purpose, who doesn't perform for attention, who doesn't tremble in solitude. You became him for yourself. And now, if she regrets anything, it's not just losing you, it's realizing too late that she never really saw you. Because in the end, she won't miss what you gave, she'll miss who you became. If this message stirred something inside you, good, because maybe you were never meant to stay the same. Maybe this pain, this silence, this distance wasn't punishment. It was the invitation to rise, to stop performing and start becoming, to stop chasing her and start choosing you. The man who walks with power doesn't beg for closure. He closes the door himself. He doesn't wait for permission. He gives it to himself. He doesn't react to absence. He builds presence. So, if you felt this, if something clicked while listening, don't ignore it. Act on it. Get back to your purpose. Return to the routine. Hit the gym. Cut the noise. Silence the need. And if this message gave you clarity, help another man. Find his, like this video, subscribe, and share it with one brother who's still lost in the noise of her silence. Because when a man finds his center again, he becomes unstoppable. He doesn't just heal, he reclaims, he rebuilds, he remembers. You were never meant to wait, you were meant to lead. Let them wonder what happened to the man who once chased. Let them feel your absence, and let your new presence say everything you never needed to explain.